guys, welcome to my channel. My name is ReadingBear and I hope you are ready for some more stories. And today, we'll take a look at some new entitled people content. If you enjoyed my content, please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and post some bear emojis in the comment. And now, let's dive right into the stories.
The first story is titled, HOA stole my property and gave me $40,000 fine for walking my dog. Hello people of Reddit. Something has been going on for a few years and the more time passes the more I question if I am in the wrong. I'll give you the entire story and then you can judge if you would have done the same thing that I did. A few years ago, I started having a ton of trouble with the HOA in my neighborhood. They are very picky people and I swear just want to do anything to get a bunch of money from fines. They made dumb rules like saying during the night we had to park in our driveways or garages and any car that was on the street overnight would get a fine. I hate most of the rules they have and can't see how they related to public safety and the like. The issue that I really had with these people was when it came to my dog. My dog is extremely well trained, and I let him do things that the HOA seems to not like. For one, I let him roam around my yard without any kind of fence because he knows not to leave the property and never has. They had no rule about it but kept nagging me that I shouldn't do that just in case. Another thing is that when I take him for walks, I don't bother putting him on a leash. He stays close to me and if I tell him to heel, he will stand right next to me. The HOA decided to give me a fine because they had some kind of leash law. He is a well-behaved dog, and I would understand wanting people with dogs they can't control on a leash. All of these rules they have make me feel like a criminal and I decided that I had the freedom to do what I wanted despite them. I never paid that fine or any of the others that they tried to write me when I was caught walking my dog without a leash. Keep in mind not a single time did he do anything wrong, and they could clearly see that. I even went to try and talk to them a few times to explain that the rules they were making weren't fair and as long as my dog didn't hurt anybody it shouldn't matter how I took him on a walk. I asked what were they going to do next? Ban dogs walking on harnesses? Say that you could only have a dog on a leash of 2 feet? They didn't like my attitude and just told me that it was their rules and I violated them. I told them that when it comes to how I raise my dog that it is my rules. They wouldn't go around and start telling people how to raise their kids, but they were telling me how to take care of my dog. It has been 3 years since that first fine and it has just been growing since then. They claimed that I owed them $40,000 and I told them right where they could shove it. There is no reason in my mind for me to give the HOA that kind of money when my dog didn't do anything wrong when off his leash. I even take him to the store with me off a leash and most of the time I don't hear anything from the staff about them wanting me to leash him because even they see he is trained. They had gotten their lawyer to drag me into a meeting and I didn't even bother getting my own lawyer because I wasn't going to give in to their crap. It was just them telling me how much I owed and breaking down how it got this high. Most of it wasn't even from the fine itself, it was from interest which I found to be just a greedy way for them to pad their pockets. We don't live in a rich neighborhood and them expecting somebody to spend $40,000, even if they had it, to just give to the HOA was out of their mind. I told them that I wasn't going to pay a single penny of what I owed them because all I did was use my right as a pet owner to have him be an off-leash dog. They just told me that if I didn't pay them, they were going to foreclose on my house and auction it off in order to get the money. You can imagine how angry this got me. They are threatening to steal my house and I don't think that they have the right to. Now I live in an area where defending your home is protected so I told them if they were going to come and try and take my house I was going to meet them at the door with a gun. I paid for my house, and I have every right to stay in it since I am the owner. They would have to call the cops and remove me by force if they ended up selling my house without me being involved. When I went to tell my friends and family the story though some of them didn't agree that I was in the right. I got mixed results from some saying that they had the right to take my house in order to get the money and that I should have followed their dumb rules. Others tell me that I am right and walking my dog without a leash shouldn't warrant such a crazy action from the HOA. I figured that they would all agree and see my side of what was going on, but they didn't. So now I open it to you, the people of Reddit, to answer this question. Am I the asshole? Comment 1. You tell them OP. The HOA shouldn't be giving you a fine unless your dog did something wrong like dig up a lawn or chase after another resident. I think they just want to pick on you and should leave you alone to go bully somebody else. They sound money hungry to me and I feel like if you give them a taste by giving in, they will keep coming back for more. The HOA can't tell you how to raise your dog. The H stands for home anyway, not dog. You are not the asshole in this situation. Comment 2. I think that you are acting like a bit of an asshole in this situation. I get that you are mad, but at the end of the day you belong to an HOA and have to follow their rules. If they say dogs need to be on leashes, then you have to do what they say. He may have never done anything before, but all it takes is 1 second for a dog to go crazy and attack somebody else. You should have paid when you first got fined and then wouldn't have been in this situation. Also, threatening to hurt people with a gun if they come to legally take your property? That is going way too far. You were wrong and need to admit that, because right now you are just an asshole. The next story is titled, "Won't compensate me for my fence? Then compensate me 100 times as much for my crops." The malicious compliance in this story is not mine, it's my brother-in-law's. Some of the details may be slightly off, but the overall story is true. My brother-in-law grows avocados in California. Several years ago, a portion of his ranch was ravaged by a wildfire, or so he thought at first. When the smoke cleared, it became obvious that the fire was caused by an electrical line that was blown over by strong winds and had landed on his fence, catching it on fire. Since he had been planning on diversifying his crops anyway, he decided he'd simply replace his fence, replant, and move on. To that end, he called up the electric company that owned the downed line and asked them for about $10,000 in compensation to replace the fence that had been destroyed by their electrical line. They denied any and all culpability in the matter and told him that he should sue them if he didn't like it. What the electric company didn't realize was that my sister, his wife, works full-time as a corporate attorney for one of the largest utilities in California, defending against cases just like this one. At first, she was concerned that this utility was a subsidiary of her employer, in which case there would be a massive conflict of interest. Apparently, legal departments frown on their employees when their husband is suing them. Go figure. Thankfully, after some investigation, she realized that the utility in question was completely independent of her employer, and at that point the gloves were off. My sister didn't represent her husband because she's typically on the other side of these cases, but she did advise him on everything he needed to bring to court to win his case, and she helped him find a very reputable lawyer with a solid record of winning cases like these. Not knowing what they were up against, the utility persisted in refusing to negotiate, hoping that by forcing my brother-in-law to trial, he would simply give up and go away. Spurred on by my sister's insistence that he had a solid case, he called their bluff and went to trial. As it turns out, California takes agricultural damage very seriously, and the court conducted its own independent investigation. It estimated the total damages at around $335,000, which is over 33 times as much as my brother-in-law had asked for initially. Furthermore, there is a law in California that awards triple damages in cases where agriculture is impacted, so the utility that had been unwilling to negotiate over $10,000 was now on the hook for over $1 million in damages. When all was said and done, my brother-in-law confided to me that he would have gladly settled for the $10,000 in arbitration and that it would probably have taken him over a decade to even sell $1 million worth of crops. The utility had to have their day in court though. Update. So, as I mentioned at the top of the story, and others have pointed out, I had some details wrong. I spoke to my sister last night, and I got a refresher. Rather than editing the original story, here is a list of things that I messed up in telling the story. This happened about 10 years ago. My brother-in-law's original settlement offer was $60K, not $10K. While they initially thought that the downed power lines were owned by a utility, possibly the one my sister works for, they turned out to be privately owned by a quarry, and that's who he ended up suing. The quarry didn't go to trial with this. They ultimately settled in excess of $1 million, so there is no way for them to appeal this. However, as I stated earlier, the overall story holds true. My brother-in-law initially offered to settle for tens of thousands of dollars, and they refused. He lawyered up with my sister's assistance. My sister knew he was going to win this because as a defense attorney for a large utility in California, she'd been settling cases like this all summer long. After my brother-in-law lawyered up, the quarry ended up having to pay out in excess of $1 million to settle the case as opposed to the tens of thousands that he was initially willing to settle for. Here are a couple of commonly posted misconceptions that are flat out wrong. This was an act of God, so no one should have had to pay, and my brother-in-law should have just sucked it up. He didn't have to suck it up because the owners of power lines are responsible for ensuring that damage to the power lines doesn't impact nearby infrastructure. They're responsible for placing the lines in a manner that ensures they are a safe distance away from flammable objects. Failure to do that is negligence. He didn't sue over acts of God, like the loss of power or the damage to the lines. He sued because he could prove that their downed lines caught his property on fire, and he could also prove that this was preventable by following the pertinent building codes. My brother-in-law will never see a dime of that once the lawyers take their cut and the appeals are exhausted. The fact is that because they settled in arbitration, no appeal is possible. He received the majority of that money and used most of it to pay off the mortgage on the ranch and to repair the damage from the fire. He sank the rest of it into the sizable mortgage on his house. The next story is titled, "Man Offended I Didn't Move for Him." This is a very short story but was recently reminded of it. It's a small interaction but shows so much about what goes through people's heads. A few years ago, I was in a really bad mood. I don't remember what it was about, but I was steaming. It's weird that I don't remember as I don't think I'd ever been so angry. Anyway, I was walking to choir practice at uni, stomping as I went when this happened. I'm not a very assertive person. I hate this, and I'm trying to change it. But in any confrontation, I have to fight a strong urge to immediately back down. When passing people in the street, I almost always move. So, when I was stomping along in rage and saw a man approaching walking the other way, I thought to myself, no, not this time. I'm sick of always moving. So, I stood firm and kept walking on the side I was on. Unfortunately, this man was apparently under the impression that since I was a small woman, I should move for his excellency. My persistence pissed him right off. As we were about to collide, he moved, and, to cope with the fact that I had won, he spat "bitch" at me as he passed. What was it about me that made him think I had to move? It's been years and I'm still angry about it. The last story is titled, "Karen Came Back for Her Stuff," after telling us that she didn't want garbage. Well, this is the second part of another post that I made but deleted it. So, here's the resume. About 4 to 3 years ago, one of my great aunts, Emma, fight with her sister, and as a result, she got kicked out. Her sister gave her 3 months to find a place and move out. Emma told my mother about this, so my mom offered to help her find a place. She took her every weekend during those 3 months to see apartments. But in the end, my great aunt didn't like any of them. She found little details in each one of them, and asked my mom directly if she could stay with us. My mom was hesitant since she knew how special her aunt was, but agreed. It didn't take long for hell to broke loose. Emma started acting entitled even before she moved. But a brief list of some of the things she did during the little time she was here was: she threw some of my stepdad's stuff, some cooking spices and his razors, then when asked about it denied it and acted offended about the accusation. Made my uncle cry and have a panic attack. Told me I would never have a boyfriend because of my lack of femininity and rude attitude. Funny since I already had and still have one. Tried to throw my mom's furniture out so she could bring in her own furniture. Lost her key and then accused my family of stealing it because we didn't like her moving in. My stepdad showed her that the key was where she left it. She then turned around and ran back to her room. Accused my mom of trying to hit her after she entered my mom's room. She didn't, my mom just scolded her since it was a pre-established boundary she couldn't enter our rooms. And the last straw, she cleaned the house with chlorine. My mom scolded her since it is bad for my health, and she already knew that. Well, after that, she told us she was moving out since we weren't welcoming and didn't even try to accommodate her. 2 weeks after she was out, but she left her stuff behind telling us that she didn't need that garbage and we could do what we wanted with it. She left multiple boxes, 2 old booksellers and 1 couch. To be honest, I would have thrown all her things the moment she got out of the house, but my mom kept them all. So, once we all are in context, this is what happened next. A year later, Emma's sister's chauffeur came to my mother's house asking when he would be able to come for Emma's stuff. This took my mother by surprise, but she told him she would only talk to Emma directly. The next day Emma messaged my mom that she and the chauffeur were coming X day at X hour to pick up her stuff. My mom got mad and told her that no one was going to be in the house that day, so Emma demanded to know when she and the chauffeur could come for her stuff. My mom told her that she couldn't tell her right now but that she would call her once she had an answer. Now, you should know that after my great aunt left, she badmouthed us all, accusing us of being cold-hearted monsters for kicking an elderly woman out, that all she wanted was to help us since we live like pigs, and finally that my grandma would be ashamed of my mom if she was still alive. The last part really hurt my mom since she lost her mom when she was relatively young, but also because she used to think of my great aunt as a second mom. So, for these reasons, my mom didn't want Emma or the chauffeur to set foot in the house. Therefore she picked a day and an hour, then messaged Emma. The day that Emma and the chauffeur would come, my mom, my uncle, and my stepdad woke up early and started moving Emma's things out. So when they both arrived, the door was closed and all her stuff was already on the sidewalk. My stepdad heard how Emma started screaming at the chauffeur, telling him to pick up that garbage and put it on the truck, and then they left. Now that I see it all written, I think the resume is a longer story, but I just wanted to share this last part because I still can't believe someone will take so much effort to recover things that they consider junk. But I guess I just will never understand Karens. Thank you for listening.